Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. Yunche's speed was fast. However, compared to Yi Xinghan's speed, he was still lacking simply far too much. The distance between them was quickly closing. In a few tens of breaths, it had already closed to 300 meters. Yunche tightened his grip on Feng Shui as he gritted his teeth. Thoughts spiraled anxiously in his mind as he racked his brains for a way to escape. And at this moment, he suddenly sensed that presence, which had locked onto him, had been severed in an instant, and even the sense of danger had also dissipated by half. Yunche hurriedly turned his head around, only to shockingly find a snow-white floating figure slowly descending from the sky, blocking Yi Xinghan's front. A powerful aura had also forcefully sealed his presence and the path in front of him. That's Ji Qianro. Yunche's heart instantly felt much calmer than before. He took a huge breath, and once again accelerated, as he charged straight forward. Yo, little Han Han. Where are you going in such a rush? Incidentally, I'm bored and have nothing to do. Do you want my help? Ji Qianro twirled his finger, blinked his blossom eyes, and looked at Yi Xinghan smilingly. The formless aura released from his body, however, had completely sealed Yi Xinghan's path, and he was no longer able to take even a single step forward. The moment he saw Ji Qianro appear, Yi Xinghan sensed trouble. Given Ji Qianro's personality, it was definitely impossible for him to not harbor any motives. Adding that he had appeared at such a coincidental timing, it was very possible that he might have peeped on everything that had happened from the shadows. Yi Xinghan said with a sunken face. Ji Qianro, move away this instant. Do not ruin my happy moment. Ayo, little Han Han is so fierce. Ji Qianro posed a wronged and frightened look, however, immediately after, his peach blossom face once again bloomed also brilliantly. But little Han Han's angry look sure is really cute, and I can't help but want to stroke it. Little Han Han, reach out your face over here, and let me have a good stroke. Yi Xinghan's body trembled, and he couldn't help but take a step back. Right after, gnashing his teeth, he said. Ji Qianro. I had long sensed that someone had been watching from somewhere. As expected, it was you. We are both people from the sacred grounds, so there's no need for nonsense. You should know who the person I was chasing after, so hurry up and move. I, Yi Xinghan, shall owe you one. Otherwise. HMPH. You and Divine Phoenix Sect do not have any form of relations either. It's not worthwhile for you to become my mortal enemy for a sect that's soon to collapse. Divine Phoenix Sect. Ji Qianro's eyes turned, and then, he laughed out femininely. You're referring to that little girl from Divine Phoenix Sect? That little girl is really adorable, but in regards to her life and death, it's not related to me in the slightest. I simply felt that it was fun to see you and little Che playing cat and mice, so I couldn't help but hop in, and slightly increase the difficulty of this game of cat and mice. It will be much more fun, you know, Tilda. Yunche? Yi Xinghan frowned, and was filled with doubts. The reason why this Ji Qianro in front of him had forcefully stopped him all of a sudden, was not because of Feng Shui, but Yunche. Although Yi Xinghan possessed an tyrant profound weapon, he was still definitely not Ji Qianro's match. If Ji Qianro wanted to trap him, it would be impossible for even him to escape from his grasp. He said with a solemn voice. What benefits did that Yunche give you? The mighty jade-faced demon monarch is actually working for a blue-wind brat who's less than 20 years old. This sure is laughable. Working for? Little Han Han, you're wrong about this Ji Qianro twirled his finger about. I have already said that I simply wished to participate in this game between little Han Han and little Che. There's still 20 hours till this realm closes. If the game ends so quickly, then we won't be able to play in the next few hours. That's so uninteresting, you know. Who? Ji Qianro raised his right hand, and unknowingly since when, a glamorous red petal was clipped between his snow-white fingers. With a slight movement of his fingers, suddenly, as though that petal was raised by a light breeze, it gently floated towards Yi Xinghan. When its distance was no more than 3 meters away from Yi Xinghan, its speed suddenly increased, and in an instant, it flew like a bullet, drawing a red line in the air which did not dissipate for a long time. Yi Xinghan slightly moved his head, and that petal seemed to have flown right past his throat. That cold intent which lasted a single moment, had even caused his heart to suddenly stop. With all his might, he maintained the calm on his face, and said with a dark voice, "You wish to kill me? Aya, little Han Han's words are scary. How could I bear to kill little Han Han?" With an anxious face, Ji Qianru shook his head to deny it. He definitely possessed the strength to kill Yi Xinghan, and in this realm, he could even kill without leaving a single trace. However, Ji Qianru knew very clearly that Yi Xinghan's body definitely carried the soul imprint personally left by Yi Meixie, heavenly monarch of Sun Moon Divine Hall. The moment Yi Xinghan dies, the memories and the scenes he had seen during a short period of time before his death would be instantly sent to Yi Meixie's soul, allowing him to know who had killed Yi Xinghan. Although Ji Qianru was arrogant, he was not that wild to the extent of incurring the heavenly monarch's killing intent. And Yi Xinghan's death would not result merely to a personal feud, but rather, a feud between the entire Sun Moon Divine Hall and Supreme Ocean Palace. But if little Han Han isn't obedient, as a senior, teaching you a small lesson is something I should do. Don't you think so too, little Han Han Tilda? Ji Qianru said smilingly. Yi Xinghan tightened his fists and his lungs were seemingly about to explode from anger. His prey was just right in front of him earlier. He could have immediately obtained Feng Shui's body and bloodline. Feng Shui's bloodline especially was an immensely huge support that could aid him in becoming the future ruler of the continent. It was something that he had to obtain no matter what. Yet, this Ji Qianru just had to pop out at this moment. Ji Qianru, I usually respect you as a senior, so I have always been polite with you. I gave you face. So you best give me yours. After confirming it was impossible for Ji Qianru to kill him, Yi Xinghan's tone had instantly become incomparably firm under his anxiousness, as he wanted to use his identity and might as one of the young masters of the sacred grounds to suppress him. Though Ji Qianru still carried that smiling look, how could he possibly be frightened by it? You know, this perfect face that I have is the most important thing in my life, so it's something I must have. But, as for little Han Han's stinky face, I don't want it at all. You. Yi Xinghan had only managed to utter that one word, when suddenly, in a blink of an eye, he acted. Two profound lights shone, attacking straight towards Ji Qianru. Sun Moon Cage. The moment Yi Xinghan acted, he had used Sun Moon Divine Hall's strongest sealing profound art. Naturally, he wanted to take the opportunity of when Ji Qianru had yet to put up any defenses to forcefully seal his movements. Facing Yi Xinghan's sudden attack, Ji Qianru's expression did not change. Even that elegant curve of his lips did not have the slightest of movement. Only his two fingers had gently twirled, and two red petals gently floated towards the left and right. Ping! Ping! When the Sun Moon profound light which carried an immensely huge sealing force made contact with the two petals, they immediately popped like soap bubbles, and were scattered to the two sides while bringing out incomparably strong surging tornadoes. At the center of the two tornadoes, however, not even Ji Qianru's hair or the corners of his clothes fluttered. He stretched his 5 fingers, and on every finger, different colored glows flashed, which looked especially beautiful. His peach blossom eyes closed, and he said with a tender smile, "As I thought, little Han Han isn't obedient. Then I have no choice to teach you a small lesson, you know, Tilda. Ji Qianru, don't think I'm afraid of you. I really want to see what you can do to me today." Yi Xinghan's eyes were dark and ruthless. Sun Moon Calamity was spread open in his hands, and the profound aura surrounding his body burst out, as incomparably strong profound energy poured out like a tsunami. Yin-yang evanescence, die. 2 profound lights, one black and one white, were released from Sun Moon Calamity. They intersected in midair, and the space where they passed through distorted slightly as they struck towards Ji Qianru. Facing this terrifying killing move, Ji Qianru still carried a calm demeanor. He gently twisted his wrist, and his 5 fingers twirled. The colorful glows on the fingertips intersected one another, creating a spectacle with varied colors. Little Han Han, you have to greatly enjoy this song of the flower burial, all right? Following after the last word falling from his lips, the colorful glows above all 5 of Ji Qianruo's fingers radiated at the same time. In an instant, yellow, red, pink, green, blue, white, brown, petals of various colors fluttered out, as though an incomparably beautiful rain of rainbow-colored flowers had suddenly begun to fall. The yin-yang energy which exploded forth charged into the rain of petals that filled the sky, and then it actually became smaller and smaller. When it was still several meters away from Ji Qianruo, it had already disappeared completely. It disappeared completely without a trace, without a single sound. What? Yi Xinghan had heard many tales of how terrifying Ji Qianruo was. However, he had never exchanged blows with him, so he had definitely never expected that his petals would be terrifying to such a degree. And at this moment, the wind, which was suffused with the dense aroma of flowers, flew towards Yi Xinghan whilst carrying a huge amount of flower petals. Yi Xinghan's pupils shrank, and he instinctively retreated his steps. However, when he had only taken a single step back, an intense tearing force was released from his front. To be more exact, it was coming from every single petal. The power behind these tearing forces had actually caused him to feel basically powerless. He simply stared with widened eyes as one petal after another made contact with his own body. The first flower petal landed on his shoulder. That was clearly a flower petal, yet, at that very moment, he basically felt a mountain pressing down on his shoulder, causing his body, which was flying in the air, to sink. And immediately after, the second, third, fourth, fifth. More and more flower petals descended onto his body. With each additional petal, Yi Xinghan's body would be pressed down even more. After a few dozen petals, he couldn't even float in the air any longer as he fiercely fell from the sky. And even after landing on the ground, that immense suppressive force still did not allow him to stand straight, as it forcefully pushed him into his knees. In the end, his entire upper body was tightly pressed onto the cold, hard ground, and he could no longer even raise his head. Ji Qianruo. Yi Xinghan's head was fixed to the ground. With a hoarse voice, he roared out, "I will definitely not forgive you. If there comes a day you land in my hands, I—" A flower petal immediately stuck onto Yi Xinghan's lips, preventing him from making another sound. Ji Qianruo shook his head, and said compassionately, "Youths, after all, become rash too easily. In times like this, you actually still dare to quarrel with me. Aren't you afraid that once I get angry, I might accidentally slice off your head? When a head is sliced off, the throat will gush out blood enough to fill the sky. Oh. Now that's the most beautiful, the most intoxicating scene in the human realm." The flower petals continued to fall, gradually piling up the ground. At the center of it was a stack of petals which was not exactly too tall. Within the stack of petals was Yi Xinghan, who was completely buried within, where not even a single corner of his clothes was exposed out. Ji Qianruo's body gently rose to the sky, as he lightly muttered to himself, "It always feels the worst to owe someone a favor. But now I have finally managed to return it. I don't know how long little Han Han will be buried either. Who? If little Che Che still ends up being captured by little Han Han, then I can no longer be blamed for it, HMPH. He. Ji Qianruo appeared and intentionally stopped Yi Xinghan. To Yunche, this was an unexpected surprise. Ji Qianruo's speech and actions all exuded a demonic aura, but his conceit was not only just written on his face, it was imprinted within his bones. This was the impression Ji Qianruo left for Yunche. The day before, Yunche had went to look for Ji Qianruo to strike a conversation and helped him cure the toad poison that has been bothering him for years. Partly, it was in order to thank him for speaking on his behalf at the arena, but even more so, it was so that he would owe him a favor. Because to such a self-conceited and arrogant person, when he owed a favor, it had been repaid no matter what. He didn't expect that he would receive Ji Qianruo's repayment so soon. However, he knew that Ji Qianruo would not kill Yi Xinghan, and how long he was able to block him was also an uncertainty. Therefore, Yunche didn't relax one bit as he carried Feng Shui and sprinted with all his might, leaving behind a trail of sweat. Time flowed past quickly. In this barren, empty, yet mysterious and abnormal world, even the flow of time would cause one's senses to be fuzzy. Yun-Che started to feel exhausted. He could no longer tell how long he had been running. It could have been 7 to 8 hours, or maybe 15 to 16 hours. His speed started to slow down before he finally collapsed to a stop and sat on the floor, breathing deeply. During his previous life in the Azure Cloud continent, frequently having to escape was already a norm. However, this was the first time in his 2 lives that he had felt such immense pressure and danger. Because this place was simply too barren. All skills related to hiding, disguising, and even anti-tracking abilities were all useless. Otherwise, if this place had been mountainous or was a forested area, even if he were carrying feng shui, it would not take too much effort for him to shake off Yi Xinghan. Last time, Burning Heaven clan sent 8 elders whose strength and speed largely outclassed him, but he had still tricked them in circles. Big Brother Yun. You're sweating a lot, Feng Shui said with her dimly lit eyes. Yun-Che wiped his forehead with his hand and laughed. To a man, sweating this much is nothing at all. I can only blame myself for not being strong enough and running out of strength so quickly. That's not true. Big Brother Yun is awesome. More awesome than anyone else, Feng Shui gently said. We safe now? No idea, but we're probably safe. Yun-Che consoled. Look in front. Jasmine suddenly said. Yun-Che's concentrated at once and rapidly looked up before becoming stunned. In front of him, the barren empty land had disappeared and a dark blue wall stood tall there. It was so tall that it blocked the view of the sky and so wide that the ends could not be seen. With Yun-Che eyesight, he couldn't see its boundaries, whether horizontally or vertically. Directly in front of Yun-Che, the bluish-black wall had an open stone door. The stone door was 300 meters tall and 300 meters wide. Everywhere else was filled with many stone windows that were tens of meters tall and wide. Between the windows was just a stretch of gray. It was impossible to tell what was inside. This is... Yun-Che looked up and his mind went into a trance for some time. In regards to such a massive structure where the borders could not be seen, he should have clearly seen it from hundreds of miles away. Furthermore, this place was so barren that even if the infrastructure was 100 times smaller, it would no doubt be exceptionally out of place and spotted immediately. However, he had never seen it at all when he was sprinting over. From his vision, this was undoubtedly a barren land previously. It seemed as though this massive structure had appeared out of thin air. From the looks of it, it probably is an ancient massive fortress. Jasmine carefully said, its aura is extremely old and it should be a building of the primordial era. It might be something that existed along with the primordial profound arc and not something built in later. Why didn't I see it previously? Yun-Che asked in surprise. Jasmine, when did you know it was there? Just now. Jasmine replied. Just now? Yun-Che was in shock. You don't need to be shocked, Jasmine calmly said. Even though this fortress is extremely old, the strength of the profound formation on its surface has not completely disappeared. The entire fortress is being covered by a massive primordial protective profound formation. Not only can the primordial protective profound formation protect the fortress from being damaged by nature, it also possesses immense hiding abilities. Though the fortress is massive, unless one comes within 300 meters of it, one would not be able to detect its existence. Furthermore, Jasmine hesitated for a while before continuing. This primordial profound formation also seemed to possess the spatial powers. If my guess is correct, this fortress is likely able to move on its own. A fortress that could move on its own? This already sounded too fantastical. Shui, according to the records of the primordial profound arc by your sect, were there any mention of this fortress? Yun-Che asked Feng Shui, who was beside him. Feng Shui shook her head gently. I have never heard my father mentioning it, so probably not. The whole fortress was bluish-black and the design was simple but old. Also, it seemed to give off a mysterious and heavy atmosphere. Yun-Che looked at it for some time and his strength had only seemed to recover a little as he asked, Jasmine, how big is this fortress? It's best you don't try to go around it. Jasmine replied calmly, its massiveness is something beyond your imagination. Even I cannot detect where its boundaries are. If you want to go around it before this world closes, it is simply impossible. That big? Yunche said in shock. You don't want to go in and look around? Jasmine calmly said, this isn't structure within the primordial profound arc, even I'm interested in it. All these years, the treasures those people wanted to find from the primordial era might be in here. Yunche stood up, and after confirming there was no unusual aura from behind, he lifted his head halfway and walked forward slowly. Soon, he arrived in front of the fortress doors. At this time, Yunche was only a few steps from the door and the massive door was completely opened. However, he could still only see a grayish patch, unable to clearly see the inside. He stopped as he held his breath and tried to scout what was beyond the door for a moment before finally stepping in. It was like he had stepped from one world into another. The light, ambience, aura, space, even his sight and hearing sensitivity all underwent massive changes. In front of him was a massive and empty hall. Numerous extremely tall stone pillars stood within the hall. The stone tiles on its base, the walls surrounding it, the top and the enumerated stone pillars were all the same bluish-black color, and also emitted an antique smell and aura. Yunche turned around. His eyes landed onto the entrance which he had just passed through. It was now a grayish patch like before and he could not see the outside anymore. He thought for a while, before hastily retreating. The surrounding world changed drastically yet again and Yunche once again returned to the barren land in which the fortress previously stood. Below his feet was the obvious footprint that he intentionally left behind earlier, proof that this was where he stood earlier. After confirming that he could exit without obstacle upon entering, Yunche was relieved and once again entered the fortress. The hall was massive, even bigger than the ranking tournament stadium Yunche was in the previous day. Yunche's eyes swept across the surroundings as he slowly proceeded. The sounds of his footsteps and his intentionally suppressed breathing was exceptionally clear within this massive empty hall. What exactly is this place? Yunche walked for a very long time before he finally saw the end of the hall. On the wall surrounding it, there was a stone door every 60 meters. Some of the doors were open and some closed. Behind the open doors were paths that lead to unknown destinations. At the end of the hall was a huge, round stone stage. The stage was 30 meters tall and 300 meters wide. On the right of the stage were very tall stone stairs that led to the second level of the fortress. Jasmine, did you discover anything? Yunche stopped and asked. Actually, I don't know anything either, but I can confirm that there is no aura from any living things here, nor is there any aura left behind from anyone, other than you, who had just come in. This is most likely a long-forgotten primordial ground. You should take a look around. You might find some unusual discoveries. If you are able to obtain an artifact from the primordial era, even if it is the lowest grade, it would undoubtedly be a huge treasure. Yunche nodded. After hesitating for a while, he walked towards the big stone stairs and went up. He didn't know how many levels were there, even Jasmine was unable to detect just how many levels there were to this fortress, hence, he didn't even need to try to guess. Even if he found out that there were thousands or tens of thousands of levels, Yunche would not be shocked. On the stone stairs, Yunche slowly ascended and looked downwards at the same time. From the top, he observed the massive hall on the first level. Just as he looked on top of the round stage, he concentrated and stopped ascending. Because at the time, he seemed to feel a red glow flash past his eyes. It was exceptionally quiet and was still a field of bluish-black. Therefore, even though the red glow was extremely weak, it seemed striking and out of the ordinary. Yunche didn't even think as he hugged Feng Shui and jumped down from the stone stairs, steadily landing above the stage as he fixated on the position where the red glow was at. What did you find? I'm still not sure. Yunche walked forward as he slowly reached the end of the stage. Then, the weak red glow seemed to flash past his eyes again, which caused him to hastily stop moving. His eyes firmly fixated on the crack between two bluish-black rocks that were on the stone stage. Yunche knelt that as he looked closely and indeed, when he focused between the two bluish-black rocks, at the narrow crack that was difficult to make out with the human eye, a faintly blinking red glow shot out. There's something below here. Jasmine had said that this was the place left behind from the primordial era and was definitely extremely old. But the thing below was still emitting a light. This must be from an unusual artifact that had been left behind. If it really was some extraordinary treasure, the sky poison pearl should have detected it. Why did the sky poison pearl have absolutely no reaction? Yunche stretched out his hand and intensely smashed this crack. A bang instantly sounded as his hand bounced back. He felt pain from his skin and bones, yet the two bluish-black rocks were perfectly fine, not even damaged in the slightest. You want to break it? With your strength, this is definitely not possible. Xie Yuanba is a mid-stage overlord and is still not able to break an ordinary rock from the outside. The rocks within this fortress are much stronger than the rocks outside. Even if you were to attack it at full strength for tens of years, it would not be damaged in the slightest. Jasmine said ruthlessly. There was definitely something special hidden under this stage, or it might contain another space. However, just as Jasmine had said, with his strength, breaking this stage apart was basically an impossible task. Yunche searched the vicinity, and did not find anything similar to a mechanism switch either. Hence, he could only give up, and once again, walk up the stone stairs. The stone stairs were long, and even after Yunche had walked for a very long time, he had only walked half of it. Who are you? Yunche's steps suddenly stopped, and he hurriedly turned his head to look at his surroundings. Who is it? Who's speaking? Ah. Big brother Yun, what's wrong? Feng Shui, who had been quietly nestling in his embrace, was given a huge fright, and she asked a little anxiously. Yunche's gaze swept his surroundings as he poured his concentration into his ears. He softly asked. Shui, did you hear a voice just now? Just now? Feng Shui shook her head, confused. Just now, Yunche had clearly heard an incomparably soft and faint voice. That voice was very weak, and seemed to a woman's voice. Yet, it was especially ethereal as well, causing him to be unable to clearly distinguish where the voice had come from. Or could it be his imagination? Jasmine, that voice just now? Did you hear it? Yunche asked with a frown. I didn't hear anything at all. Jasmine replied. What did you hear? Even Jasmine did not hear it. Yunche couldn't help but suspect that what he heard earlier was just an illusory voice. He focused his mind, quietly stood at his current spot, and his eyes swept around the vicinity for a long time, yet he could no longer hear any voice. Yunche continued to raise his feet and walk up the stairs. After a long time, he finally arrived at the second floor of the fortress. Bluish-black walls, bluish-black floors and bluish-black ceilings. Everything was no different from the first floor. Yunche did not continue to head up, and instead, walked straight towards an open stone door. Behind the stone door was unexpectedly a simple and neat place which looked similar to a courtyard. Inside, there were stone tables, stone stools, and similar-looking bluish-black earthen jars, where most of them were already broken. Behind the courtyard, there were 7 to 8 rooms that were regularly distributed. Yunche walked into the courtyard, stood at a stone door of one of the rooms, and tried to push it with his hands. Suddenly, on the right side of the stone door, a small-scaled profound formation the size of a palm appeared with a flash. Right after, the profound formation turned, and the stone door slowly opened on its own. All the doors here should have been set with profound formations such as this one, which can be conveniently opened and locked. But, the profound energy within these small-scale profound formations are already very weak, and even you will be able to easily destroy them. However, it's already extremely rare for them to be able to exist since the primordial era. The strength of those who set these profound formations are definitely beyond ordinary. Jasmine said sternly. From the looks of it, this place seems to be for residential use. Yunche walked into the stone room. Inside, there was a stone table, 2 stone stools, a cabinet-like stone frame, and a stone bed that was adequately spacious and large. The arrangements of the other rooms should be more or less the same as well. With how huge this fortress was, if it was arranged for residential use, most probably, it would be possible for the entire population of the Blue Wind Empire to live in. Yunche turned around and realized that there was a small-scaled profound formation that occasionally flashed gently at the back of the stone door. Its position was in exactly the same position as the profound formation that appeared when Yunche pushed open the door. It should be the same profound formation. However, it could only be seen from the inside, and could only be seen on the outside when the stone door was touched. Try using your profound energy to touch this profound formation, Jasmine suddenly said. Following her instructions, Yunche reached out his hand and struck towards the profound formation with profound energy that was neither strong nor weak. In an instant, with a bang, the door, which was initially opened, suddenly closed extremely quickly. As I thought, Jasmine said. By touching this profound formation from the inside, it's able to completely lock the stone door, which can only be opened from the inside, and it's impossible to open from the outside. It is really suitable for self-protection. During the primordial era, various devils and demonic beasts crossed these lands, and these basic self-protection measures should be really common. However, if the profound formation is destroyed from the outside by others, the people inside would be completely sealed instead. Shua, let's rest here for a while. Yunche walked to the side of that stone bed, and then sat down while leaning against the wall. The moment he relaxed his mind, the sense of fatigue assaulted over like a flood of water. He didn't release Feng Shui. Instead, he changed his posture while still holding her in his embrace. He was completely able to pull out a blanket from the sky poison pearl and set it on the stone bed, and then have Feng Shui lay on it. However, evidently, he couldn't bear to do it. Because the sensation of embracing Princess Snow like this was enough to have any man to indulge himself to the point where he was unwilling to let go. Who are you? Yunche, who had only just sat down, slightly shook as he instantly lifted his head. If there was a possibility that the first time was just his imagination or an illusory voice, then this time, Yunche definitely would not believe that it was his imagination. He had heard that voice with absolute clarity. It was the same and exact voice as earlier. Who are you? Who's talking to me? Yunche heightened his concentration and shouted out loud. In this towering fortress, which suddenly appeared within the primordial profound arc, a relic left from the primordial era in which Jasmine was absolutely sure that there wasn't a single existing living being left, how could there be a woman's voice? You heard a voice again? Jasmine asked in surprise. Since Jasmine had asked in such a manner, it naturally meant that she still did not hear the voice this time. Which also meant that only Yunche was able to hear that voice. That voice was also only being sent to Yunche alone. Yunche once again kept quiet for a long while. However, he no longer heard that voice again. With sunken brows, he said, "There's definitely someone in this ancient fortress. She should be really far away from me, but she knows of my existence. If it's not your imagination, then it can only be a residual soul." Jasmine said slowly. Residual soul? Jasmine's voice was very calm, as though she was long used to things like residual souls. And it should be an extremely weak residual soul, otherwise she wouldn't be having such difficulties sending out her soul voice consecutively. There's no need for you to look for her. Since she didn't hesitate to consume her weakened soul energy to converse with you, it means that she seems to be interested in you, and she will once again take the initiative to converse with you. The reason why you are unable to receive a reply should be due to her soul energy, which has been weakened to the point where she's only able to voice out her next words after a long while. Big Brother Yun, is there someone else around? Feng Shui raised her head from Yunche's embrace and gently asked. Yunche shook his head. No, I seem to have heard some voices, that's all. Shui, you should be very tired. Have a good rest then. In the place where we are now, no one else is able to find us. Feng Shui gently shook her head. I'm not tired. Big Brother Yun is the one who's really tired. I only have to take a short break and then I'll recover. Yunche said with a smile. With the dragon god's physique and the power of the great way of the Buddha, the recovery speed of his profound energy and stamina were much faster than a regular person's. The two people quietened down. After several hours of escaping, where they didn't dare to stop for a single moment, their hearts finally found peace and calm. and Yunche was finally able to truly feel the warmth and fragrance in his embrace. Lightly hugging Princess Snow like this was most probably a dreamlike scene which every man would not even dare to dream of. And Princess Snow was like a compliant little kitten nestling in his embrace. She didn't struggle nor reject it, and was simply resting peacefully. Shwe, the phoenix god in your divine phoenix sect, has it really died? Yunche asked with a light voice. However, Jasmine had told him the answer to this question before, and Yi Xinghan's and Feng Feiyan's words had even more so proved it. Feng Shui was silent for a short while, before she gently nodded. Lord Phoenix God had already departed 3 years ago. 16 years ago, the reason why Lord Phoenix God had chosen me after my birth was because it knew that its lifespan was about to end, and it required a successor with sufficient potential. I was under the guidance of Lord Phoenix God for 13 years, and I received all of Lord Phoenix God's inheritance. His energy source, soul energy, all of its phoenix blood, and all of its memories. Feng Shui's words shook Yunche. It was no wonder that at the mere age of 16, she possessed the strength of a half-step monarch. It was also no wonder she was able to easily distinguish his bloodline, and knew so clearly of the feud between the two phoenix spirits back then. Although the phoenix god of Divine Phoenix Empire was dead, it had passed down its own energy source, soul energy, and even its memories, to Feng Shui. This allowed Feng Shui's starting point to be frighteningly high. Her growth speed, and the heights she could achieve in the future, would undoubtedly shock the whole world as well. It was thus no wonder Feng Shui had such a high position in the Divine Phoenix sect. Since she had inherited everything from the Phoenix god, once Feng Shui was to completely mature, she would clearly become the second Phoenix of the Divine Phoenix sect. In regards to their future Phoenix god, Divine Phoenix sect would naturally have to protect her with their utmost best. The possibility of a single obstruction was definitely not allowed while she had yet to fully mature. In regards to Lord Phoenix God's departure, only Royal Father, Great Elder, Big Brother Crown Prince, Grandfather, Great-Grandfather, and me, only 6 people know about it. Royal Father said that this is the biggest secret of our sect. It definitely can't be leaked out, and it can't even be told to the people of our sect. But, on the 2nd year, the 4 great sacred grounds had been constantly sending voice transmissions to probe about the situation regarding Lord Phoenix God, as though they knew that Lord Phoenix God was no longer here. Royal Father was really furious and perplexed as well. Royal Father had always guessed that the sacred grounds were probably unable to sense Lord Phoenix God's presence, and thus came to probe about it. Never did we expect that it would actually be. Feng Shui's voice was really saddened, as she was still unable to recover from the Great Elder's betrayal. At the same time, she couldn't help but worry for Divine Phoenix Empire's future. Without the might of the Phoenix God, Divine Phoenix sect would definitely struggle while being suppressed by the 4 great sacred grounds without end. For 5,000 years, the sole reason why the Divine Phoenix sect was able to develop so quickly under the watch of the 4 great sacred grounds and was faintly reaching the brink of the sacred grounds level, was due to the Phoenix God's existence. Yunche sighed in his heart, yet he didn't find it to be too shocking. With every influential power, the ones that are most prone to betrayal were usually the people at the very top of the spectrum. These people were limited to but a few figures. Because these types of people knew the most, their position from the summit was the closest, and they were absolutely clear of every advantage and disadvantage the entire force possessed. Thus, at certain appropriate timings, they were the most susceptible to harboring intents of betrayal. If the Divine Phoenix sect were to continue going strong like this, Feng Feiyan's intent of betrayal might not have awoken even till his death. However, with their Phoenix God's departure, at the same time he feared for the future of the Divine Phoenix sect, he was even more fearful of his own future. So after weighing his options, he decided to defect to Sun Moon Divine Hall at the very earliest moment. If Yunche and Xie Yuanba were not present, he would have already helped Yi Xinghan achieve his objective, and let Feng Shui, who carried Divine Phoenix Empire's biggest hope, land in Yi Xinghan's hands. The consequences were unimaginable. It's all right, it's fine this way as well. Not only were they unable to achieve what they wanted, they have completely exposed themselves instead. Otherwise, the later they are exposed, it would become even more dangerous. Yunche consoled her. Feng Shui lightly responded. It's all because of Big Brother Yoon. If not for Big Brother Yoon, I would have. If Royal Father knew, he will definitely be really thankful to Big Brother Yoon as well. It's good enough if your father stops trying to kill me. Yoon Chae laughed. He definitely couldn't believe that protecting Feng Shui was the only reason why Feng Hongkong allowed Feng Feiyan to act on his own. Killing him was definitely one of their goals as well. However, he then once again thought in another way. Once Feng Hongkong found out about today, he would definitely be under increased pressure, and there might even be a possibility for him to breach decorum with Sun Moon Divine Hall. When that time comes, he probably wouldn't even have the time to think of killing him. The 4 great sacred grounds are already aware of the Phoenix God's death, so they should be aware that you have inherited the Phoenix God's physique as well. Yi Xinghan harbors motives towards you, so the other 3 sacred grounds will most probably keep their eyes on you from now as well. Yoon Chae closed his eyes, and he was a little pained and worried. But, in the end, my strength is still too weak. I basically do not have the power to protect you, otherwise I would instantly take you away from your royal father's hands, and hide you from both your sect and those from the sacred grounds. Feng Shui revealed a smile. Big Brother Yoon wants to protect me to such an extent, I'm so happy. If Big Brother Yoon wants to take me away, I might not resist, you know. Shui, you said those words yourself. Yoon Chae smiled as well. If there comes a day I really want to take Shui away, Shui must definitely not. Sky? Poison? Pearl? Yoon Chae's words came to a grinding halt, as the mysterious and ethereal woman's voice resounded for the 3rd time. And this time, what she said was no longer, "Who are you?" but clearly, "Sky, Poison, Pearl. Who are you? Where are you?" Yoon Chae yelled with his head raised. Since the other party knew of his existence and even sound transmitted to him, then she obviously would be able to hear his voice. But it was the same as the last 2 times. After the voice sounded, it fell silent, without any other sounds of speech. The 3rd voice was also weak, and he could barely hear it, but Yoon Chae actually had a vague feeling that the source of the voice was not that far from him. "Big Brother Yoon, did you hear that weird voice again?" Feng Shui asked. Yoon Chae nodded, then consoled her, "Don't be scared, Shui, it could just be my misconception due to me being too nervous. This place is so ancient and quiet, there shouldn't be anyone here. With Big Brother Yoon by my side, I'm not scared at all," Feng Shui said while beaming. Thinking about what she said previously, her expression dimmed once again as she asked faintly, "Big Brother Yoon, is the other Lord Phoenix God still well?" "Should be still well." Yoon Chae pondered, then replied, "The Phoenix spirit I had encountered had told me before that it was weaker than your divine Phoenix sect's Phoenix spirit. Your Phoenix God had suffered heavy injuries back then, and has already passed away. As for the one I encountered, even though it isn't dead yet, its vitality ought to be greatly injured. But it was still well 3 years ago." He paused, then continued, "If Shui wants to, I can bring Shui to visit that Phoenix spirit." Okay. Feng Shui happily agreed. This is also Lord Phoenix God's remaining wish. "Oh right, Big Brother Yoon, how did you meet that Lord Phoenix God? Can you tell me?" Yoon Chae lifted his head as he fondly thought back to the past. To him, that was a secret that he had never told anyone before. But in front of Feng Shui's clear eyes, he couldn't raise a single trace of rejection. Wearing a light smile, his voice gently slowed. "That was 3 years ago. At that time, my profound strength was only at the nascent profound realm. I was being chased by a branch sect member of a sect named Xiao sect. It was my current princess wife who had saved me soon after. But at that time, she wasn't my wife yet. I only had just met her at that time. We fled together. Then, the aerial profound beast we were riding on had completely exhausted its strength, and because of the injuries it received from our pursuer, we fell straight down from a high altitude." As Yoon Chae recalled the memories of that time, he slowly narrated it to Feng Shui. When he first started talking, his voice was flat, but his voice couldn't help but gradually begin to fill with emotion. After all, it was an unforgettable experience for both him and Kang Yu. It was within those tribulations that his emotions were deepened. At the same time, it was also a major turning point in his life. If not for what happened then, the later unstable events wouldn't have happened, the grievances brought along by the Phoenix Flames wouldn't have happened, and the present him wouldn't have existed today. Yunche talked for a very long time, narrating the events from entering the 10,000 Beast Mountain range all the way to leaving the Phoenix trial grounds. When he finally finished, he looked down and actually saw Feng Shui's soft lips lightly pursed. Her breathing was as gentle as an orchid, she had already fallen asleep. In addition to her completely powerless body, the heavy blows she received and the long hours of fleeing and terror, even though Feng Shui had always been carried in Yunche's arms, no matter if it was her mental state or body, they had long since been utterly exhausted. Amidst Yunche's voice, her mind had finally relaxed slightly, and an uncontrollable tiredness caused her to unwittingly fall asleep. Yunche let out a light sigh of relief as he silently looked at the image of Feng Shui sleeping, then immediately stared into a daze. Exhaustion gradually attacked him as he leaned his head against the ice-cold wall and also unwittingly fell asleep. Please, find her. Only you can save her. Please, find her. Yunche trembled, and immediately woke up with that voice still resounding in his ears. And this time, he was unable to tell if it was a real voice or a voice in his dreams. Big Brother Yun. It was unknown whether Yunche's sudden movement had shocked her awake or if she had already been awake. Feng Shui's beautiful eyes flashed slightly as she stared at him unblinkingly. It's nothing, Yunche shook his head, it's just that it seems like I heard that weird voice again. Once he finished talking, Yunche suddenly thought of something. He knitted his brows as he asked his in his consciousness, Jasmine, how long have I been asleep? From entering the primordial profound arc to now, how many hours have passed? You didn't sleep that long. As for how long you've been in the primordial profound arc, 22 hours have passed, or even a little more. 22 hours. Yunche's eyebrows slightly hopped. In other words, he only had not even 2 hours before the primordial profound arc closes. Just earlier, he had suddenly remembered what spiritual master Ji Yukeng said to Xie Yuanba. Before the primordial profound arc closes, he must not be in a confined area. This even included ravines and caverns. Otherwise, the 24th hour force would not be able to reach him, and he wouldn't be able to get out of the primordial profound arc. He would also disappear along with the primordial profound arc, and die within the primordial profound arc. And the place where he and Feng Shui were in was precisely a truly isolated environment. The short sleep from before had restored about 50 to 60% of Yunche's physical and profound strength. He carried Feng Shui and said, Shui, we should leave this place. There's not even 2 hours until the primordial profound arc closes, and we can leave now. When that time comes, you'll truly be safe. Amen, Feng Shui lightly responded as she subconsciously leaned closer to Yunche. Let's go. Yunche raised his hand and struck a stream of profound energy into the profound formation on the right of the stone door. Instantly, the profound formation flashed, and the tightly closed stone door speedily opened after a short rumbling. Carrying Feng Shui, Yunche walked out. Then, with a single glance, he spotted the descending stone stairs. Earlier, he chose to enter the stone door next to the stone stairs, and suppressed his curiosity to head any deeper, as he was afraid of losing his way. After all, this place was simply too huge. The structure and the colors of the place were especially uniform as well. With just a slight mistake, he would be completely lost. As he walked down the stone stairs, Yunche's heart had slightly calmed down as well. The primordial profound arc was quickly about to close. After reaching outside, with Divine Phoenix Sect and Spiritual Master Ji Yukeng, Yixing Han and Feng Fei Yan shouldn't have the thought of succeeding in their motives, and this crisis would have been considered to be narrowly averted as well. Xie Yuanbao was the only one he was currently worried about. He was in possession of a transportation jade, so theoretically speaking, he could totally save his own life. However, Yunche couldn't help but worry that he had gambled his own life in order to fight for more time for his own escape. Very quickly, he had already descended half of the flight of stairs, and the gigantic hall on the first floor was nearly at the end of his sight. At this moment, Jasmine suddenly let out a solemn voice. Truly a ghost who won't go away. Ghost who won't go away? What do you mean? Yunche blanked, and his footsteps had slowed down as well. Just as he said that, his body suddenly felt a chill. It felt as though he was clearly tightly locked onto by a presence. Yunche suddenly turned his head, and looked below him, in the direction he first came up from. Borrowing the slightly dusky light, he saw a blurry figure currently charging over with extreme speed. Yi Xinghan. When Yunche discovered him, Yi Xinghan had long spotted Yunche and Feng Shui, who was in his embrace. His initial pair of darkened eyes instantly shone with an odd light, and his face revealed a surprised joy, to the extent where he let out a nearly crazed laughter. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Initially, I had already given up. I never expected that the heavens will still be generous to me. Ha 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 ha. Yunche never expected that when there were merely 2 hours left before the primordial profound arc closes, in this mysterious and dead-silent fortress, he would actually once again encounter Yi Xinghan. His eyes instantly grew overcast. Without even thinking any further, he quickly turned about, and charged up with his quickest speed. This time, I want to see where you two can run off to. Yi Xinghan's speed was as quick as lightning. In his eyes, since Yunche had already landed in his own line of sight, then there would no longer be any possibility of escape. Seeing Yunche sprinting straight towards the second floor, he smiled sinisterly. Swinging his arm, Sun Moon Calamity instantly shot out an eye-piercing white profound light, slicing towards Yunche's legs. Evidently, he was afraid of harming Feng Shui by mistake. Yunche's figure shook as he instantly dodged away with Star God's broken shadow. The profound light struck the handrail of the stone stairs, letting out an extremely ear-piercing ring. The surrounding airflow trembled greatly, yet, the place where the profound light had struck was completely unscathed, not even a single hint of damage and scar could be seen. The bricks of this place were terrifyingly tough as expected. Not just Yunche, even with Yi Xinghan's impressive strength, he was unable to damage it in the slightest. Hurry and hide inside the stone room. With your speed, it's impossible to escape him, Jasmine said solemnly. Even without Jasmine's reminder, Yunche would do the same as well. Because in a situation like this, that was his only option. With his quickest speed, he charged towards the second floor, and then sprinted towards the courtyard he had stopped at before. When he approached the stone door, Yi Xinghan had already charged to the second floor as well. His distance from Yunche's back was only left with less than 60 meters. He laughed coldly, and said with disdain, "Still thinking about running?" Yi Xinghan fiercely pushed out his palm, and an extremely violent force of profound energy charged straight towards Yunche's back. A heavy sense of danger came from behind him. Yunche had no time to turn around, as he quickly embraced Feng Shui tightly, and crazily surged the profound energy in his entire body. Sealing cloud-locking sun. Bang! Chaotic sounds of explosions rang out, and the barrier Yunche had set up around his body had only lasted for a mere second before shattering completely. It had blocked against most of the attack, but the part of the energy Yunche wasn't able to block was still unbearable for him, and he puked out a huge mouthful of blood. Borrowing the force of the attack, his body flew past the center of the courtyard. Like a meteor, he shot into one of the stone rooms, and his body heavily struck onto the wall inside. However, right before he fell onto the ground, with extremely strong willpower, he maintained his consciousness and quickly stretched out his arm. With profound energy gathered in his hand, he pushed towards the profound formation at the side of the stone door. RMM. The stone door instantly closed tightly shut, isolating themselves from Yi Xinghan outside. Yunche laid his back onto the ground, and panted with huge breaths as he retracted his stretched-out arm with a little difficulty as well. His back was blasted by Yi Xinghan's energy, and right after, he heavily struck against the stone wall. Hence, his blood flow was currently in a mess, and his organs had shifted greatly from their original positions as well, as fresh blood constantly trickled down from the corner of his lips. However, for someone who possessed the abilities of a late-stage Emperor Profound Realm to actually be capable of staying alive after blocking an attack that consisted of a third of a middle-stage Overlord's strength in this world, only Yunche could achieve it. And in the entire process, Feng Shui had been protected by him with all his might, and did not suffer any form of injury. However, she was still worried and frightened to the point where she was about to cry. Big Brother Yoon, you're fine. You're fine, right? Big Brother Yoon. I'm fine, Yoon Chae panted with huge breaths. Then, he sat up with great difficulty. He raised up Feng Shui up by his side as well, and had her lean against his own shoulder as they leaned against the slightly cold stone wall together. I'm fine, it's only a small wound. Bang! Boom! Ding! Clang! Boom! Various banging sounds came from the direction of the stone door, which was merely less than 10 steps away from them. However, no matter the stone door or the stone wall, under the incomparably intense attacks, neither of them budged a single bit. Yoon Chae held onto Feng Shui's hand, and consoled her. Shui, don't worry. He won't be able to enter. Feng Shui leaned against Yoon Chae's shoulder, and she tightly hugged onto his arm with both her hands. Episode 78 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.